So again, good morning. My name is Ken DeMar. I'm I lead the support team, and on behalf of the GRIP-Birkman and Ida We leadership team, I want to welcome you to this time. This is an exciting day for us. We literally have been working about nearly the last 2 years to make what we are able to provide you as coaches something even better, especially on the GRIP side, understanding that God's ability to build the church through gifts is such an important part of who we are. And I don't know, for those of you who use the Bible app for your daily devotions this morning, I was so pleased when the verse of the day comes from 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 10. It says in New Living Translation, God has given each of you a gift from his great variety of spiritual gifts. Use them well to serve one another. What a great start to our day, and what a great chance we have to understand that's exactly what we are trying to do today. So again, welcome to you all. Just want you to, we're looking for, as you see on the screen today, we're looking for new opportunities to guide others as we move from I to we together. You're going to notice that we're moving away from the GRIP-Birkman ideology or even terminology to the I to we, moving from I to we, understanding that how God wants us to serve is not ourselves, but the body of Christ. And so today's objectives, you're going to connect with some other coaches who are online with you. You're going to experience the new assessments for team development. And one of the things that we have said all along is that the real strength of what we used to have as GRIP-Birkman was not just in understanding ourselves, but in actually being able to see how that builds teams together. And that's, we wanted to build on that side of things. So experience new assessments. We have some great new team development stuff that I think you're going to love. And then there's some new upgrades for the website. And this is something we're working on. They're not all 100%, but we're working on them. And we're wanting this to be just a better experience for you and the clients that you are bringing into GRIP-Birkman. So having said that, I do want to welcome you to this time together. Would you pause with me, and let's just begin with a word of prayer as we start this time together. Lord God, we do want to build the body of Christ. We want all that we do to not just benefit ourselves, but rather to understand how you gift us and you empower us to build the body of Christ, to bring glory to your bride, the church. So guide and direct us as we excitedly look at what we may be able to add in terms of value to how we build the body of Christ and how we develop community together. So may your presence and your peace be with us. I thank you for people who are able to join us from literally around the world. And would your grace and your peace just flow in all we do this day. We'll give you thanks and praise. Amen. Again, well, here we are. We're going to actually start with a little, first, I guess I want to do some introductions. There's some people on this call that you need to meet. Primarily, first of all, John, why don't you introduce yourself to the group? And if your introduction is not good enough, I will find a way to introduce you better. So, okay.
Thanks for that warning. Good morning, everyone. John Blake have been leading the I to we team in its formation and been with GRIP-Birkman for, 15 plus years at this point, and such an honor to get to share some of these things with you this morning, be a part of it, and look forward to hearing from you as well. So one wife, 2 kids, a 4-year-old and 6-year-old. They are a lot of fun, and so excited to connect with you and share this morning.
Good. There's some other members of our leadership team that are online, and like to just give you a moment to introduce you to them. Larry Gay is with us. Larry has been a part of this leadership team and been part of GRIP-Birkman for a long time and is a key part of this. So Larry, say hi to the group.
Hi to the group. I've been a part of GRIP-Birkman for coming up to 20 years. And like many of you, was introduced to it through Paul Ford. and have been privileged to be working with him from the very first GRIP-Birkman users group that took place about 2005 until now. And with all that we're able to be doing with that, just thrilled to be a part of the leadership team and have a small part in the development of some of these new things we're introducing today.
Good. And Jen, would you introduce yourself? She's also part of our leadership team.
Hi, I'm Jen Burnham, and I think I'm the newest member of the leadership team. John introduced me to the GRIP-Birkman toolkit a few years ago and has asked me to help just where I can with in different ways with the team. So I'm happy to be here. I live in the Pacific Northwest and also have one husband and 2 kids as well.
Okay. Another member of our leadership team here this morning, thanks, Jen, is Matt. Matt, introduce yourself.
Good morning, where I am. It's great to be able to join you guys. My name is Matt. Been with GRIP-Birkman for quite a while. I don't count years anymore. We'll get rid of those. I live in the Czech Republic. I'm currently calling from Panera Bread in the States, but normally I live in the Czech Republic, and excited about some of these new things that we're getting to roll out today.
Okay, thanks, Matt. And as I said before, I'm Ken DeMar. I lead the support team, and my wife is Anna Dawn. So if you've ever done any orders or if you've ever written support, you get Anna Dawn to respond. And then also on our team is Susan. Do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Hi, I'm Susan Gay, and I've been along with Larry in the GRIP-Birkman community for since 2004, I think, and it's been a privilege and a joy to work with the leadership team for the last several years.
Oh, good. Thank you. And, it's not part of our leadership team right now, but a key person in the life of GRIP-Birkman is Paul Ford. And Paul, welcome to this group today. And if you'd like to say hi, we'd love to hear from you.
Hi.
Can I speak on his behalf, since he did land at
he is just getting back,
I don't know, 7, 8 p.m. yesterday to his house. And he actually was so gracious to butt dial me on his way home from the airport. So it was a special moment, Paul, to be able to welcome you back. Thank you for that. No, thanks so much for being a part of this, knowing that you just got back from 2 weeks in Uganda, spending time with our dear friends over there.
Good.
It is a privilege and a joy I would not miss being a part of today. I planned to get back last night and all the excitement that it would mean for my brain and body, but there were no words to describe the excitement of today and the privilege of those of you who just spoken. And we serve a Father who says, "I alone have plans for you." And I'm just rejoicing with the plans. And I do bring you greetings from friends that a number of us have in East Africa. Sam and Toto Abuku being friends of a number of us, and just amazing brothers and sisters who encourage me and encourage us to be faithful in amazing ways. So anyway, Alleluia, as they would say, and privileged to be here. Thank you for the chance.
Okay, well, welcome, Paul. And of course, we all love Paul and know that Paul has been just a key part of GRIP from the beginning, and GRIP-Birkman and his relationship to Roger Birkman really opened the door for that. And so, and we're just so pleased that he's still part of who we are and what's going on. So welcome. One of the things that we hear all the time as a leadership team, we hear our coaches talk about the fact that the team aspect of this is so powerful. And I had a coach say to me one time, that the one-to-one is a great learning experience, but when we do a team build, this Holy Spirit shows up. And we've sensed that all along. And then the question has been, is this all? Do we just talk about spiritual gifts, or is there more? And what you're going to hear today is the idea that, yeah, there's more, and we can build on that foundation. Right off the bat, though, I'd like us to actually begin talking among ourselves. So what's one challenge you're addressing lately in your coaching? When you really want a team to grow and you want to coach a team, how are you doing it? We're going to just take a couple minutes And Larry's going to just divide us into some subgroups. And we'd love you to just answer this question. What is one challenge you're addressing lately in your coaching or team development? Because we think that as you think about those, you're going to realize what we're offering today is actually going to help meet those. So Larry's going to divide you into teams. I'm going to call you back in just a few minutes, but I'd love you just to answer this question when you're in the groups. Enjoy. We'll be back together in a minute or two. Okay, well, welcome back. And hopefully that was a good 10 minutes and not the longest 10 minutes of your life. But I do welcome you back. But I would like to hear from you. So as you got together, as you talked about your team, did you come up with any insights or any common themes? And by the way, I know who is in the group. So if I don't hear from you, I'm just going to call on some of you that I know. So any thoughts or insights? Unmute yourself and talk to us. So what's one challenge that you feel that you've been addressing lately in your coaching and team development?
Hi, Ken, it's me, Steve.
Yes.
I have one challenge that we had from our group was getting the leader buy-in to all of this and team development. You know, it's one aspect to go through GRIP-Birkman as a team, but to continue on in the team building side and getting the team leader to buy into it. So that was one challenge that our team came up with.
Yeah, very important.
One thing the group that I was in talked about was the ignorance of not just people in the pew, but of pastors understanding spiritual gifts. And then the error of equating a gift with a role, and the dynamic that creates.
Yeah. Jen, you were going to jump in?
Yeah, one of the kind of along the lines of leader support and buy-in was this idea of making this move beyond a one and done conversation, but integrating it into kind of the regular cadence of a team life. But that was a good observation with someone in my group.
Good, thank you.
Leader buy-in was certainly a big deal in our discussion, and I had the privilege to write a book called Knocking Over the Leadership Ladder in 2004. And I reference that only to say, I wish I could tell you the amount of feedback I've gotten in the last year. It's just almost been explosive, the number of people who are reacting to the content of that book, and the dynamic realities related to leadership and control and all the related stuff. So it's overwhelming how much of an issue that is today.
Yeah, good.
People want community, and there are blockages.
Yeah. Good. Anybody else? Les Barnard, what happened in your group?
We had a great time. We talked a little bit about just the value of the GRIP-Birkman for teams coming out of the pandemic and some of the challenges that teams have faced, having been remote, having all kinds of transition when there wasn't good onboarding, all the rest of it. So the individual and team experiences have been really helpful to reset teams. And I think that's a challenge that most of our teams are addressing. One of the other things that we talked about was just the interesting reality that the GRIP particularly gives us the ability to identify where people with supporting gifts have been inadvertently elevated into leadership roles that are up front. And that's been a challenge for them. And so it gives them the permission to identify where they are supposed to be and the freedom to just celebrate that and to move into that area that God has called them to when they might have been inadvertently pushed into a role that doesn't fit well for them by somebody in their organization or by its structure.
Yeah. Boy, that's so freeing, isn't it? When you can see that and realize, the gifts that God has given us doesn't necessitate that we fit a certain role, that in fact, God uses us gifts both in supporting and equipping. And that's a great insight for a team. Yeah, it really is. Yeah, just as we're thinking here, I'll call on some more of you here, but I was dealing with a team, and we were looking at the gift mix of the team. We discovered that nobody on the team had evangelism as part of their gift. And so I remember asking the team, what is it like? What does this mean that no one on this team has evangelism? And one of the key leaders in the group said, could this be why our church has not baptized a new believer in the last 3 years? Yep. Could that be? And so that led us into a time of praying. God, either bring somebody in our team or elevate this gift in us. Elevate someone with that gift. And so, yeah, it's good.
Can I? I was just, I had mentioned that when we have new leaders coming in to our campus ministry all the time. And so when I do the GRIP-Birkman, it's another stack of information that I feel like I need to know. And so when I look at the binder, I walk away because I'm overwhelmed by the amount of information. And I think, like I told my group, I think I can coach myself out of my situation, but I get that the paralysis by just the overwhelming nature of how much information is there, and then the feeling like I need to use all of it now to make this team the best team that it can be. And so I just have left it on the shelf for some time. So I am thankful for this conference here to get back into the swing of things, but it's a challenge for me.
Yeah, I understand. By the way, I want to call on just a few more minutes we have here on this, but I did want to say, feel free to use the meeting chat. If we'll be watching the chat, if you have questions or comments, feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll address them if you don't feel like you want to, for some reason, speak to the group. Any other insights before we move on?
As a motivated users, just responding to Garrett's last comment, I think one of the things I'm excited about from you all in leadership is the potential of greater usage of GRIP in places by itself where it has value. And I think Garrett, you've highlighted one of the primary reasons why that has exciting possibilities, because we've simplified process, we've simplified cost, and we've given access to what can be in moving from I to we, and it gives a chance without as big a packet of info to dump on to experience and feel dumped on. So I really respect what you said, Garrett, and I think thank you, leadership, for the way that you've begun to move, and I think even we'll learn some of those things today. So.
I think you're going to like when you hear what we're talking about today. I think you're going to like what we're doing in terms of keeping the costs reasonable. When we're when we're pricing churches out of the process, then we're not doing value to the kingdom, and so I think that's a concern of ours. So I hope you're hearing that. Anything else? I want to give you one more chance. We're going to move on here to actually helping you talk about what we're presenting today and why we want to move in this direction. And I'm going to turn it over to Larry to talk a little bit about what we're talking about today, called GRIP+. Go ahead, Larry.
Hey, thank you, Ken. A number of us came to GRIP-Birkman because of our association with Paul Ford. He was our first introduction to this with your leadership GRIP. But even way before your leadership GRIP, Paul was working for a long time on the whole concept of spiritual gifts in the church and in the body. There was a publication called 7 Principles for Mobilizing Spiritual Gifts. Remember that one, Paul? And working through that with churches, the whole idea of the gifts being identified in the context of body life first started way back there, almost 30 years ago now. And then came along Getting Your Gifts in Gear, which was a little bit more of a workbook for you to begin assessing yourself and your gifts. And then many of us know this product, your leadership grip, the paper version. A number of people on this call first did your leadership grip in the paper version, where we had to go and score ourselves, and we had a here's what I think of you that we could photocopy and send to people. That was in process when we learned about GRIP and Birkman coming together, as Paul Ford began to establish a relationship with Dr. Birkman. And coming out of that, then there was sort of what Paul always referred to as the poor man's GRIP-Birkman, the poor man's Birkman, which was in discovering your ministry identity. We knew that, some of us, as DME. And there were all kinds of different releases of this in different places, in different formats, sometimes in countries overseas where they wanted to print it in a smaller, cheaper version with less paper. And then there were also the elements of that, like team style questionnaire and determining your vital values assessment, and just the gift survey, the Heights Modified Spiritual Gift Survey, that was really kind of the root of all this in some ways, to say this thing has been progressing along for quite a while, a lot of different iterations. And Paul mentioned knocking over the leadership ladder and the later publication, moving from I to we. All of this part of a progression toward how we are working with individuals and teams to help them discover their spiritual gifts and then apply those, and using it with GRIP-Birkman, seeing how our personality is energized by our gifts and carrying us to new places with that whole concept of the dotted diamond, et cetera. And so we, several years ago, as the digital world was expanding, we realized we needed to come to an online version of the GRIP. And that came online. Dave Weltzer at Church Smart Publications helped us a lot. He invested a lot of money, in fact, in helping to get the GRIP online. And that continued to develop as we had new releases. 2017, the most major new release of that. And then with finally getting the Here's What I Think of You team reports up on that. With all of that, we came and we said, there is something in some way that is still missing. We did not have Discovering Your Ministry Identity online. There were parts of that that we felt were missing, and there were some other gaps that were there. So a couple of years ago, we started putting together some task forces. And as I was looking through the list of some of the emails just now, I counted up about 30 people that have participated in at least 3 specific task forces over the course of the last 2 years, giving major contributions. Some of those people are on this call today. Others of them were not able to make it today, but it's a significant number of people that have had input into this. We do have Here's What I Think of You up online now, and it's really making a difference for a number of people as they're doing their GRIP reports. But guess what? There was still something missing. We didn't have that poor man's version of the Birkman to fall back on, something that was more accessible. But it wasn't just finding a replacement for the Birkman. It was saying we need some more tools to help us in our assessment of teams and how they are working together, how they can improve building their unity in the body of Christ. And that's what led us up to today with some of the products that John's going to be introducing to you that we're calling GRIP Plus. It has really, really been a thrilling ride, and we're not through yet. There's still more to come. John, talk to us a little bit about what GRIP Plus is going to be.
So GRIP Plus, what a fun opportunity to be able to bring this. You know, we've consistently been saying, and as you watch the trajectory of the history, there's always been a focus on team. We all came to a GRIP-Birkman coaches training that had it as an element, right? We would, well, here's a team activity you can use with it. Here's a a place you can continue to grow. But we realize that we have to continue to grow in this area. If we believe in team, if we truly believe that it's about the relationships that we're having with one another, and that gifts are discerned in the context of relationship, that relationships are messy, that how we begin to interact is driven from a natural side and from a supernatural. How do we continue to meaningfully have this conversation? And so for us, in looking at GRIP, we realized, man, what does it look like? Where do we need to continue to grow? And so we really talked about this idea of we want to be able to discuss team dynamics and core motivations in a different way. We want to be able to address that meaningfully. The Birkman is great, but we know that there are limitations to Birkman and to it cost prohibitive for some audiences. The complexity is challenging, requiring a coach be involved in it. We want this to be accessible. And so we began to say, what would it look like for us to create something that would allow us to have a meaningful, but not overly complex conversation? One of my favorite phrases is, on the other side of complexity is simplicity. And how do we get through some of that complexity that is, so that we can have a meaningful conversation? We talked about this idea of needing to share our God-given passion. It's so easy for us to say, well, our gifts define us. Our gifts actually help us understand how we do things well. But where the Lord is actually leading us in a season, that what are we being drawn to is a different conversation. And we realize that within GRIP, and even GRIP-Birkman, it's a gap. It was a gap that we didn't have a way to meaningfully lean into the idea of what is it in this season that the Lord's calling us to. And knowing that so much of the conversations that are happening in this space, or that are happening, become I conversations, become, well, here's my personal calling, or here's what I'm being led to. But how do we integrate that? And so we discussed what are the options for that. And then the third piece is, we know you have the leader buy-in component, and you have the structures that are in place. Not a lot of our tools right now are centered around or focus in on the uniqueness of the leader role. We understand that, through Paul's book, as he mentioned, Knocking Over the Leadership Ladder, we've redefined leadership for our community, a series of functions fulfilled by a group of individuals. Makes a lot of sense, but the world is still so hierarchical in their view of the leaders. How do we equip the leaders in a unique way to say, yes, I'm sitting in this seat of authority, but that does not mean that my voice is more significant than others. Rather, I want to create an inclusive environment. I want to create an environment where we're drawn together. How do we do that? And so we do that a little bit in coaching, but to have a tool that intentionally says, if you're going to use this, here's some things that we want you to be thinking about. And how do we lead with the leader in mind, if you will? How do we come alongside and thought partner with them? So all of these things together led us to essentially evaluate and to see what was there. And frankly, we did see a lot of the missing components and discover your ministry identity. Again, God's wisdom in our heritage and in Paul and what you led us through, and to so grateful for that, and being able to think through your vast experience along with the vast experience of these 30 others as well, and saying, how do we do this in a meaningful way for the body of Christ, for not just the context of organizations, not just the context of local churches, not just the context of small groups. How do we make this to where it feels like it's meaningful for a variety of people? So that led us then to this place of, okay, GRIP's great, GRIP-Birkman, love it, but there's an opportunity. There's something more here. And as we begin to look at those opportunities in GRIP Plus, and you've identified some of these things that becomes a one-time conversation, can become very, if the leader's not bought in, how do we move things forward? And so we wanted to evaluate some of those things and look at some of those realities as we move forward. So I wanted to introduce you to the first of the two assessments in this. And the first one is called Our Values. Our Values is a team-based assessment that evaluates and helps us identify our personal assessments so that we can have the conversation in the context of teams, that we can look at it in a completely different way of this. And the process of developing this was actually really fun. The way that we went about it, we evaluated a lot of different values. And so there are a lot of values assessments that are out there. Everything from Brene Brown and her list of 118, I believe that's on her list, to some organizational ones that essentially had 10. The processes of taking them, everything from write your own words that, captivate your spirit, to here are the 5, pick it, this is now who you are, right? And so you have this spectrum of different ways of doing this, but we had some guiding principles that became really important to us. One was that we wanted everything that we do to be team focused. Again, a lot of values assessments become, again, just an I sort of thing. Well, these are my personal values, but we wanted to say, how do we keep this team focused? We wanted to keep it simple. We didn't want to have 120 different values that could really go any direction. We knew we wanted to try to simplify the process down, both in taking the assessment, receiving the report, and then hopefully in that team conversation as well. And we want it to be applicable to all teams. We didn't want to try to limit this to any demographic, to any sort of specific niche. And so as we began to do that, then we came up with this, and there was a task force that came together. And I'm going to open it up to them. Ken and Larry and Jen were all a part of this task force. Mark, you were part of it as well, I believe. So, want to hear from you. What was the experience of creating this Our Values together? What stood out for you in creating Our Values in this process that we went through as a team over about 9 months of really discerning down to the core values that we identified? Jen, I'll pick on you first.
As you were talking, I think one of the things that I'm reflecting on is just as we were developing it in my day job, the need for this tool kept coming up. The importance of having people have a place to align around values, articulate their own, think about their role in their organization's values. Just it continues to be something really relevant for me in a non-church, non-ministry based setting. So I think that's one of the things that jumps to mind when I get first.
Yeah,
I agree, Jen. One of the most exciting parts of actually working on the task force, particularly with the values, was coming to agreement about the definitions, because sometimes we had different our own personal definitions, or we had different associations with certain words. And so as we came to this list of 66 values, for the group to come to agreement about those definitions, looking it up in dictionaries, looking up synonyms, talking about theological issues, how people in the churches receive this, how people in the secular world receive it, going through all of that to finally come up with this concise definition was really, really exciting to me.
I think for me, being a part of this, I continually tried to approach this from a pastoral perspective. What's biblically, how do we understand this? Are we creating values that look that are determined by our culture, or is there a biblical basis for this? And over, we went back to Scripture. What is Scripture saying about this value? How important it is? And that was something that I found incredibly important to me and helpful to the team.
So let's take a look at it and see a little bit of the process again that is there for the individuals, for the way that it will look as they go through, as they take this. So the first thing is that it'll just pop up with, after the order's been placed, they will see this then as the values assessment. And this values assessment will take them through a bit of an introduction. But the piece that's fun, I think, is the initial run through. So you do an initial run through of the 66 values and simply looking at, is it low, mid, or high? And for each of them, you'll notice in this sample here, authenticity, it'll give you then a mini descriptor behind it. So for each of the 66, there's a mini descriptor that helps align it. One of the things that is true of values is there is that interpretation piece, right? We've already talked about that. But in order for it to be a meaningful team conversation, you don't want the definition to be out here. You want to bring it in so that it's at least a little bit narrow, so that we're in the same ballpark as we're talking about the words. And we really believe that in order for that to happen, we needed to be able to have this mini descriptor along with it. And so for each of the 66, simply going through step one is to identify low, medium, or high. The second piece or the third step is actually then with that, it'll pull out all of those that you indicated as high values. You'll get a list like this to be able to see all of them. And from all of those that you identified high, we're asking you then to select your top 5. And this is in no rank order. I think that's one of the uniquenesses. One of the things that we're not trying to do is place an added hierarchical value or force someone down to what is your top value. We want to keep it at 5 because, again, we believe that for the team conversation, that will create enough overlap as well as enough differentiation. There was some thinking around that. The fourth step then is you'll get to see then both your highs go through the same process on the low side of identifying your 5 low. This, to my knowledge, is the only values assessment that identifies low values. Again, in God's wisdom, as he used Paul to create vital values, and as you come at it from a team perspective, it is really important to understand what low values are for a number of reasons. One of those reasons being that sometimes lows can be aversions. They can be things that actually repulsive, nails on a chalkboard sort of experience. They can also be things where I just don't think about it. I don't care about it that much. And so these become not necessarily areas of conflict, but ways that there could be tension. And so this allows us to have a meaningful, proactive conversation, which is really what our goal is, right? Team building, definition of team building is sitting down and having the right conversations together. That's it, right? And so this tool provides us the opportunity to have that shared language as we're having the right conversation and being able to do that. So once you've then completed that, then you hit the submit button. Let me show you a couple of the different things of then as coaches and as people who have taken it, what it looks like for you to actually be able to see some of these things. So the first one is that you will get a PDF report then for your personal reports. So in this, you will then have a description. You'll have your high values listed with some reflective questions and your low values with some reflective questions. Again, this opportunity to dig into personally, let me think through this. How do my values impact the team? How am I seeing it? The reflective questions as individuals go through those forces us into a different headspace of where do my low values, where does that create conflict? And so you have this personal report that's created from it. You also have then, and this is kind of fun, a team a team values report. So I'm going to share one of the teams, Fellowship of Wildwood. They're in St. Louis. They completed this. And I just want to show you the team report. I talked with their pastor. He said it would be all right for me to do this. So thanks, Ryan, for allowing us to. But with the values, one of the things that we want to do is for coaches, for teams to be able to look at the information in a variety of different ways. So you have the opportunity of just looking at the values, not the individuals, of looking at their highs for the teams. Where did they come out together? Their lows, and then sort of this idea of team total. So if I subtracted out the lows, if you will, and just left the highs, what would it show us about the highs on our team? Interesting with this team, they had a lot of similarities in their lows, but not a lot on their highs. Led to an interesting conversation as far as, does that be common? Would it not be common? But again, you get to see some of that information when you have this sort of overview page. The other thing then that you have is down here where we call it a values focus, but it's including the individuals into this. And so then by each individual, you can see what their highs are, what the lows are, or then combined on this. And it becomes a view of looking at this in a different way. Again, same information, but just various ways to be able to slice and dice it. As a coach, that can just be a really helpful way that you can look through the information. Here you have where you have highs and lows, and we have the varied values where there's somebody that has a high as well as somebody that has a low. That's what a varied value would be, where creativity, couple that really value it, and then somebody that it's not as much of a priority for them. So proactively having that conversation. Well, how does that work as we're coming together? So you have this as a team report, and then you can actually download the results and actually have it then in an Excel. So if you wanted to do additional slicing and dicing on your own, then you can actually come in here and you still have the team focus and the values focus to be able to look at each individual. So we wanted to give you some options, some ways that you could look at this in different ways. And one of the great things is that you can actually decide if you want the entire team to have access to all of the information, or if as a coach you want to restrict that, then just to the team leader initially process through it before you make it available to a wider group in that. So these are some of the uniquenesses of the values assessment, being able to look at the information in different ways, being able to then lead into different conversations. One of the things that we're committed to is opening this up so that it is available to other people, which meant that then for the team conversations, we wanted to have a facilitation guide. So we've actually created a facilitation guide that walks a team leader or a coach through step by step on how would you use this in a team meeting? How could we meaningfully have a conversation where individuals felt heard, and then where we're beginning to have a team conversation about what is the uniqueness then that we have together? So that idea of individual to understanding, we're really sharing and discovering and sharing, and then getting to a place where we're having a conversation so that we can then apply the knowledge. You know, it's great to have these assessments, but if we don't know what to do with them, how to embed it into our team interactions, then it's a gap. So we wanted to make sure that we supported our coaches and team leaders in that way. A lot of information here, and we're going to give you a lot more in just a minute. But what I'd love to do now is give you a chance to actually then connect again around just this idea of the values report, the idea of our values, the idea of a team values, and really think about you're interacting in a variety of groups. Where would this conversation around values, where might it be valuable? You like that? Values, valuable? Where might there be some value in that? What challenges do you potentially see in using it? And what do you need as coaches now, really helping us continue to develop things? What do you need in order to be able to use the tool well as you move forward? And what questions do you have about it? We're not going to try to answer everything today, but we do want to capture the questions so that we can, again, continue to meaningfully do this. We're all GRIP-Birkman coaches, so if you want to think through even how might this work in some of those contexts, in some of those teams, love for you to think through that as well. And we're going to give you about 15 minutes to have this conversation, thinking about where this might fit, uniquenesses, some of these questions. And so enjoy the group time, thinking not just about the product itself, but really the idea of values. How does that integrate into the team conversations that you're having, some of the challenges that you may have identified earlier on, and how might we begin to use this together? So Larry, I'll let you throw us into different groups this time. So spend a minute getting to know each other. We're going to give you 15 minutes, so make sure that you've introduced yourself and then dig into this conversation together.
And they're off and running. Be sure to accept your invitation to the room.
The recording is back in progress, so good. So what were some of the benefits that you guys uncovered in this conversation? Who are some of the groups that you, as you were listening to John, you thought, oh yeah, this has a direct value for a group that I'm working with right now? Does anybody want to share a story they heard?
I didn't share this with my group, but right now I'm in a denominational leadership role, and it's a very traditional, historical denomination, and there's someone on the team who, and the bishop very much wants to and be more like missional and creative, but I see them bumping up against their tradition, and they still very much think church needs to look like this, right? And so I see like this value struggle, even just yesterday, in something as simple as like a position description for a community missioner, like a leader, a neighborhood missioner, and how one person is very much trying to like hold on to the traditional values, and the other person on the team is saying, no, we need to just like we need to try something new, so let's not try to cram it in that box. And I could see the frustration and a bit of a power struggle on both sides, where I think that if the team had been able to go through this values assessment together and identify these things, it would be more clear to both of them on the team, like what it is that they're bumping up against with one another.
So good. So giving some language to what you're seeing, so maybe where things aren't just quite fitting quite right. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Others?
In our group, we came that possibly it could be used at all levels, you know, on the leadership side, where you need to get the buy-in so that they have their own values identified and understand each other, as well as if you have an elders board, you know, what is the elders board value statement, and is there a conflict between leadership and a board, as well as staff? So if you go from the leadership to the staff,
yeah,
do they understand as a group what their values are as a team? So that's what we came up with, as it could be used in a multiple disciplinary way of looking at an organization.
Yeah, good. And then where do we find alignment? Where is it kind of fitting together? Where is it not?
Exactly.
Good. What about challenges? Did anyone uncover some, this tool looks good, but I'm not quite sure how I can put it into practice?
Well, Jen, you were in the group I was in, and we had a number of challenges. We were thinking about somebody who's been using the GRIP-Birkman for a while with their team or their denomination. Now the challenge is going to be selling a new tool. And that's going to be huge. The other thing, and I brought this up, and I'll probably keep bringing it up till it's resolved, is the ignorance, not just in the pew, but in the pulpit about spiritual gifts. I am just appalled when I visit churches and the lead pastor, the pastoral team, they're functioning at the level of a warm body filling roles. And spiritual gifts is just a total alien concept. And it's almost like, and one of the questions here is, I'm going to need a primer to prime the pump before I could take them to a tool that uses spiritual gifts. And so that's huge.
Yeah, what they are, what they aren't. And that can kind of complement then this progression to, now that we've talked about spiritual gifts, let's talk about values and how they're distinct from each other. Yeah, good. And I really want to highlight your comment. As a consultant, I see this a lot: tool fatigue, assessment fatigue. We just went and did this assessment. Now you're giving me another assessment. Feels like you're kind of assessment happy. So we have a real wisdom on the right way to introduce those things. What else did other challenges from other groups?
We saw that there could be a bit of a risk if it's not framed right. Your next question is, what tools do we need? I think that facilitation guide and how it's set up is really important, because if you're looking at a team and you say, well, we all kind of value this, but you don't, so you probably don't need to be here. And it can be used to try and homogenize our values rather than, really what we talk about, that we need to have unity and diversity. So really setting it up well. Otherwise, it could be used negatively, perhaps, within a church or an organization, which would be the opposite of what we're trying to achieve, right? But we saw that is a risk or a challenge that we would want to help people approach head on in the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. Honoring the diversity, valuing it, absolutely. Ken, I'm not sure how much more time we have. Do we want to go spend a little bit more time sort of unpacking any more resources people need for tools? Or I'm seeing a head nod from John, so we'll go forward with that. So we've already talked from Les about, maybe we need to help some technical information about how to interpret spiritual gifts. And we heard from Matt about, that facilitator guide that's out there. What other things could help you use this tool well?
This may be a whole nother conversation and a whole nother project. So sorry. First,
okay, let's move on, Mark.
First, Anna Dawn's a saint. I just need to say that, Ken. She's my new favorite GRIP-Birkman person. Sorry, John. But I think some type of way to know what roles the church needs filled and what gifting needs to be in place for that, or what values that role holds. So if it's a children's minister, what values are you looking for in a children's minister? If it's a lead pastor, what values are you looking for in a lead pastor? And kind of blending these two together. But again, I think that's a whole nother year process. But I think it'd be cool to have that tool to be able to blend people and get that unified front, moving from the I to we process.
Okay, good.
That is a whole different project, but I like the thinking. And Paul, do you want to jump in on some of the work that you've historically done in that space a little bit? You're muted right now. Paul, you're muted.
Actually, I'm still struck back to our conversation, which had a number of seasoned veterans who said, man, want to apologize for saying this was more important than all the other pieces of GRIP, which I thought was a wonderful thing to hear for this reason. This looks like an incredible lead out tool because of the nature of what's going on in culture all around us and the differing values and the battles going on. But it's also a quick way to get people to talk openly about something that's important to them, which last time I checked, people seem to really like to do today. And so that's where I'm really caught on this. And I wish there were right ways to get people to the right positions with the right gifts. I think some of the dynamic challenges of that lend to the fact that God desires to bring people together so that he can create what he wants, and how we observe who he's brought together and who he's already brought. This adds one more dynamically important piece to that process. And it's, let's look, patent stuff. Let's look at who God brought to discern more clearly to what God intends, so that we can fashion what God has already brought to us, who God has already brought to us. So anyway, those are a couple of reactions that I have at this point.
So Paul, can we go back to the word you used, observe instead of engineering? Is that sort of what I'm hearing you say?
I think, and I certainly, as an American, I think one of the things we like to think is that if we just had the right things in the right way, in the right order, that we would get it right. And I think God has this really bad habit of setting things up so that we have to trust him, which means we can't prescribe what we want and then look for it all the time. But rather, he says, I will bring you who you need. And then we have privilege, Jen, to your word, to observe and watch. I'm calling it more and more watch, wait, listen. How I'm watching and waiting and listening is much more strategic than what I decide in terms of what I prescribe in terms of direction or vision or outcomes. And so, yeah, Jen, I think what you said is, if I don't think I had no idea how important it would end up being that my shutting up and watching and listening and asking the right questions and allowing God to begin to show. I mean, I get goosebumps now thinking about how much I learn when I watch for what God has already prepared, versus, especially from the consulting piece of what I want to do and what I think ought to happen. Man, I just don't get to do that anymore. I'm just not smart. I'm just not as smart as I used to be. So.
I like how you made it my word, even though you said it first, but I'll take it. You can make it mine. It's good.
So here's a thought, because one of the things that we have the advantage of with the existing tools is that it really helps, maybe for the first time, for people develop an enhanced sense of self-awareness, and then gives them the capacity to begin to understand their interaction with others and to become more aware of them.
Wow.
So when you talk about values, if that's a charged conversation because it's on the basis of some kind of conflict or tension, then I think it is a question of whether it is actually the lead out tool, or whether or not you need to build that foundational understanding around myself and others before we go into that, right? So I think the interesting challenge in all of this is going to be the nuances of how you identify the space the team is in. And I don't think there's going to be one way to approach this. I think you're going to have to discern and really prayerfully think through with the leader and other conversations. Okay, what's the right way for us to handle this? I did a team debrief recently with a team overseas that was really in a challenging spot. And the values thing would have been absolutely essential. I wish I'd had that as an additional piece, but in that particular setting, starting there would not have worked because they hadn't figured themselves or each other out yet in terms of how to talk to each other. And that would have made it a little different, a little bit more difficult. So it's going to be a nuanced piece, I think, to figure out where to put it, but I can't wait to begin to use it.
Yeah, I think you pull out some really good points, Les, that I've learned over the years is that there often is not a formula to this. And it does require some discernment. And we just have another minute. And as you guys were talking, I'm supposed to facilitate and not add my own story, but I will just throw in here that, as we were developing these values, I had some epiphanies of my own of times where I was sitting in fellowship with people that I cared and loved and seemed to be, saying the same things, believing the same things, but something didn't quite fit. And as my husband and I talked it through, and we were doing this development of this tool, it really boiled down to a difference of values. And I will say, not given an opportunity to share and a lot, kind of have this comparison discussion of values that I think would have caused some healing. So I think, just that is another little pitch for this. Not having this can cause some real dissension. When you're aligned in other places, someone in my group called out, we could really be aligned in team styles, but our values could be different, and that could be causing kind of the thorn in the side. So some things for us to chew on as we take a 10-minute break and come back together. Ken or John, anything to say to the group before we send people out?
Yeah, just to say, again, we're going to take about 10 minutes. We know that you need a bit of a bio break or fill up your coffee cup. But I do want to say that we have some special stuff for you in the second half of this, and staying to the end is a really good idea. So you're going to get to be part of a great process in the next bit. So see you in 10 minutes. Take care. Okay, well, welcome back. I hope you got a chance to freshen your coffee and get ready to come back. As I said before, I'm looking forward to this next half, and I think you're going to enjoy what's going on. Jen, you had a comment that I think we needed to hear at the break. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, just as I was reflecting on the conversation we had earlier, I think that we haven't mentioned yet, at least for the recording purposes, that this is an assessment. The values assessment is one that can be used in a secular setting as well as in a Christian setting. And I think that's a nice kind of crossover for this group to be thinking through.
And why did we do that?
Well, why did we do that, John? Well, so that I can use it. I think that might be part of it.
Well, I will say that for me, I work with a lot of business people in the church who come. I've had several people who've come to me and said, "Hey, I'd like for you to come and do a team build." And by the way, most of the people on my team are Christians, but not all of them are. So how do we work together? And here's a tool that can give us some conversation starters that is not using spiritual language.
Yeah. Yep. Good call.
Can I say something real quick here to y'all?
Sure.
I'd like to, John and team, I'd like to really thank you guys. I'm clearly developing one of the most meaningful and creative jet lag headaches I've ever had, bar none. And I just wanted you to know how much I appreciate that. Just thank you so much for the depth and the creativity behind what is becoming quite a dynamic thing going on in my head. So hallelujah. Thank you so very much to all of you, each of you and all of you.
We left sarcasm out of the value set, I think, John, if memory serves.
I didn't model very well at the beginning. Let's be honest.
I am so screwed right now. I am so screwed.
And yet it lives on.
And the mute button is going on.
I'm going to hit the mute button right now.
There you go.
Interventions are the next tool that we wanted to bring up, how to meaningfully do that together. No, I did want to address one of the questions. Do values change after conversation? Let's play it out, but my gut is no. Values, though, could change after dramatic life experience. I think that would be one of those things where I would say yes. And again, I would defer to some of you who have extensively done a lot of work in values in different venues. But as far as that question, but my personal values changing after a conversation, it might be that I have a deeper understanding, and so a different word might fit it better, but would they actually change? My gut would be probably no.
I would, if I may add to that, actually, seriously, I think values, as more than anything else, are truly developmental. They're just developmental over a long period of time. And so I think dramatic shift certainly is possible with a new insight. But John, I think that's really, really true. I think that they're so unusual in the developmental nature of, and that's why we own them so strongly, is because they've usually been developed over a long period of time. So,
yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And I'm sure there's going to be lots of other questions. We will probably address a lot of this stuff in Coach's Cafe in the coming months. And as questions come to us, there's some suppositions that the leadership team has made as we've been in the journey, understanding that maybe we've not been able to, or have not clearly identified our thinking on this and some of the process. So we're happy to hear your questions and happy to hear any concerns you have. We spent the first half of this introducing this new tool, the values tool. We want to take the second half of this time here to introduce another tool to you that we've been working on that we feel has value as well. It's part of that whole GRIP Plus. And so I'm going to turn this back over to John. Talk to us about discerning direction together.
Yeah. My kids have a little song that they like to sing now, not as much when they were a little bit younger, where they would sing it, circle, square, triangle, heart. And one day walking around, realized that, we sort of address the circle, square. We address, the triangle is, if you switch that into a diamond, we address sort of the asterisk. But we didn't really have a way to get at the heart component in GRIP-Birkman. This idea of what is it that the Lord has placed inside of us that really drives us, that causes us to be willing to make significant sacrifice toward an end. And that's a miss. And it comes up oftentimes in our GRIP-Birkman coaches training. It may have come up in yours. It certainly comes up in conversation. What is the role of calling, of direction, of us working together in this season? How do we take GRIP-Birkman and have that conversation? And what I experienced and what many of you have experienced is that we were trying to put a square peg into a round hole. We were trying to retrofit GRIP-Birkman to be able to have a meaningful direction conversation. It pseudo really doesn't work. It doesn't work to be able to do that. And so what we have wrestled with is, how do we do this? How do we help people have a meaningful conversation together about where the Lord is leading us in this season? How do we meaningfully have a conversation that helps me have language for what the Lord's put inside of me? And how do I meaningfully have that conversation with my team leader? And then together as a group, what does that look like? And so that is the background. That's the backstory on discerning direction together. Before we even go into any more of that, part of the task force that developed this, Mark Baugh, a good friend, was part of that process. And Mark, I'd just love to hear from your perspective in your role, in what you currently do. Where did you see the gap, or where did you see a little bit of the need, and what was important to you as we went through this development process?
Sure. So I'm in youth ministry right now, full-time youth ministry, and I have a team of 4 people plus lots of leaders. And the gap that I saw was this gap between my vision casting and their kind of ownership of it, where it seemed like a lot of times it was top-down leadership. It was this idea of, I set the goal, I set the vision, I need you to accomplish it. But what I desired so much was for it to be our vision, our goals, our accomplishments that were empowered by the Holy Spirit. And that gap really started to play out a lot as I tried to free myself up of things where I wasn't doing everything. And so being able to use kind of discerning direction together process and this moving from I to we, they were able to see that they have ownership in what we're doing. That God has empowered them as a part of the team to have a role of leadership in their area. They may not have been the one leading the whole organization, but they're the one leading these specific parts of it. And it also allowed us to experience that joy, power, and fruit and knowing that we were right where we were supposed to be in our own little worlds in a way. So my admin didn't feel like she was not playing her role because she wasn't setting major visions and had big ideations, or I wasn't feeling bad asking her to do the administrative things that her spiritual gifting was. And so really seeing that. And then the biggest part of it for me was that through the kind of IDOE process, it really moved from me and casting my vision to making sure that we saw what God had in store for us. That if everybody at the same table is kind of coming to the same things, then we know that Holy Spirit is guiding us into a direction that He has set for us. It's not just my own vision.
Yeah, thanks. And I think that concept right there of as a leader, I don't have to have the entire vision, and frankly, I don't. And so that false assumption that I got it, I can do this, and moving forward is okay on its own, and everybody come and join me. The premise behind that, we don't see as biblical. We don't see that as the way that Scripture intended it. Rather, let's pay attention to who the Lord brought together and discern more clearly where we should go. We get so enamored with our own strategies. We get so enamored with what we've created that we begin to isolate roles and positions rather than understanding the individuals. And we burn people out, frankly. If there's not a bigger problem in our country, it's that people in ministry are burned out and on the pathway of burnout. And part of that is that we've expected too much out of leaders, that they need to be able to do this on their own, and B, that we're putting other people around them in the wrong places, utilizing them and not listening to what the songs of their hearts are, not listening to how the Lord has uniquely gifted them and called them into unique spaces, into unique opportunities. And so this tool was designed with that in mind, to be team focused. We want the individual to have language that they may not have had before, but this is a team process. Let's be very clear about that. If individuals use this, we hope it feels a little awkward. That's our goal. Our goal is that individuals would not be able to comfortably say, well, it's okay that I just did this process by myself. We want them to feel compelled to integrate it into a process, to communicate it, to make sure that the team is having this conversation, that it's process oriented. This is not a one and done conversation. You'll see that we've intentionally mapped out steps that we believe will help the team move forward in this, that it's supporting the leaders who want to embark on this process. One of the components that is, we're getting it programmed right now, but one of the things that we're committed to is that we're very upfront that it takes a unique kind of leader to approach discerning direction together, and not unique as far as here's the type of leader you are, but rather an openness to the Holy Spirit that may or may not be present. And if that isn't present, if they believe that vision is from the Lord to them and it's their job to tell everybody else what to do, this process will actually be really negative. It will be harmful for them to go through this process. And so we want to be upfront about some of those postures that will be necessary for a team to meaningfully go through this. And we want it to be dynamic. A lot of times these processes, again, it's a one and done. We don't go back to it. We don't have the conversations in an ongoing way. It was that was a nice team building experience that we had, or that was a good exercise, and we forget about it. And so we wanted to think through, how could we intentionally make this a process that has some built-in checks, some built-in milestones through that. So all of those as part of the process of moving into this. So let's talk about the process then that we're inviting people into. The first one is to draft a personal discernment statement. We want them to wrestle with what the Lord has given them. I'll show you in just a second what that looks like, what that process is. But there's a personal process that begins The second piece then is that we want them to reflect in a one-on-one conversation. We understand the value of coaching, right? That's why you're sitting on this call, because you've seen the value of that. In this process, we actually believe that the leader plays a more significant role, that this conversation is best served by the team leader in having this conversation with them so that they can unpack, sharpen, understand their statement, and communicate things about that. The next one is to then refine it. As after that conversation, we know that there's a process, but there could be a little bit of wordsmithing, a little adjustments, maybe not, but to go back and to spend some time in reflection there, and then to engage in a group discernment process. This is where then they will come together, share their own statements, and then have a collective. The last piece is that we've built in is that we actually intentionally build in a 6-month review. We want to see how they're doing at living this out. We want there to be another conversation with the leader, with the group together, to begin to see how the team has made adjustments. If we go through this process and we identify things where the Lord has created some shared passion around something new, 6 months, were we able to act on that? How have we adjusted for that? And so thinking through how we do that in a really meaningful way is part of this process. So let's take a look at it real quick. The personal discerning direction process. This is, we spent some time thinking through what does this look like? How do we set this up in a meaningful way? And so the report then, actually, I want to take you to the actual site to show you what it looks like. And let me show you the result of it, though. Let me show you the result of it is this personal discerning direction statement. So this goes through then what you actually have in what you've come up with. For me, thought partner and equip organizational leadership to greater unity in the body of Christ. For me, that describes what I feel called to in this season of ministry, what I feel led to. And it gives some of the framing. Again, really important that we're restating, when we get to operate in change management in our day job a little bit. And one of our principles is communicate the same thing 7 times 7 ways. So they're getting it in the introductory videos in the process. We want them to see it again here. We're having them have the conversation with their team leader so that, again, they're getting this restating of why are we doing this together? What does it mean? Some of those core values being built in here. One of the components of it is we're asking them to identify how much of their time they believe that they're spending in this. Again, what does this go back to? Well, for us, it goes back to a core belief of 65-35. If we're not spending significantly more than half of our time in this area of passion or calling, we need to understand why. We need to figure that out, because it could be poor stewardship. It could be I'm not being responsive to the Holy Spirit's leading. Or it could be that there are some things in my job description that, frankly, I should be open-handed with and release to someone else because, frankly, they might do it better. And so from a very practical standpoint, we want to begin to understand, what is that percentage? What are those things then that are meaningful? So that's a key component of this as you think through that, and will become part of the driver then in the team leader report. The team leader report then, and this is one where, again, it is exclusively for the team leader and the coach. This is not a report that would be made available to everyone. We take the team leader actually through a process of their own discernment. Again, we want them to have a coach, but we didn't want to put this behind some sort of, you have to have a coach, right? We want to make these tools available with the proper protection or the proper facilitation in place for that. This then allows the team leader to understand from a team direction standpoint, what is your team seeing about what they believe about the team direction? What are they saying as far as way they see the team being led, expanding or growing, deepening? What are their responses in that space? And then we have sort of this overall average of how's your team feeling about how they're doing. So we wanted to get the team leader to see, hey, you know what? Your team's feeling pretty good. But then there's this idea of breaking it down, understanding who are those that feel like they're doing it 85% of the time, those that are sort of in the middle, broken down so that, again, we can walk them through a reflective process in this as a team leader, giving them then the different responses. So as a team leader, we feel this is a really important and valuable tool for them to go through. The last piece then is that they'll have access to this team page. And similar to the values is, you'll see a lot of them right on our team haven't been completed yet, but the idea of having the personal statement completed, letting them see that percentage of time holistically, again, the team impact, being able to visibly see it all in one space right here concisely, and then the team direction, some of those different things, being able to download the reports into more of the Excel format. So again, we wanted to make it to where it's visible. And as a team leader, then I have the choice of making it visible to the entire team, or I can keep it just as the team leader. The other piece that we have that goes along with this is actually the facilitation guides. And for the discerning direction as a unique space, we actually have it set up to where we have 2 different facilitation guides, and we'll get to where we have 3 different facilitation guides, but to where for the facilitation guide, there's a formation for a team that's in formation to have that, and one that's there for development. So if you're a new team that's forming, it's a little bit different conversation than if you're an existing team and trying to maybe do, a 2-degree shift in direction rather than we need to create a direction together. We felt like those were different, so creating a couple of different opportunities for that. So in that then, this process around that is, again, to help us not only identify what God has put inside of us uniquely for this season, but how then does it fit together? How then do we bring those together? And that facilitation really meaningfully addresses that. So I'm going to actually get us back into our groups to just talk about this idea of creating direction together and thinking through that. And in the meantime, then give you the chance to talk through how have you done that to date on your own, as well as then thinking about the tool itself. So similar questions the last time, but I want you to really just think about how is this conversation happening today? How might the tool enhance it? And then what are some of the questions that you have around that, around the idea of a tool that would help us lean into this conversation, that direction isn't just from the leader, but it really is a shared process together as we do that. So Larry, I'm going to let you send us back out into groups and give you about 13 minutes to have this conversation around direction.
Okay, so we'll be off to the rooms.
Hey, well, welcome back, everybody, and hopefully that was a good time of discussion. So, what did you learn there? Talk to us. What are some groups that that would benefit from this tool, and what are some challenges you're seeing, and what might you need actually to use this tool well? What'd you learn?
So I'll jump in. I love the tool, especially the processing of it. I have some other tools I've used to do this type of thing, but I really think this is a good process. I think your big challenges are, which is no matter what tool you use, is my experience is that probably a vast majority of churches out there are visionless as far as, what's God's vision for the church, the impact the church is supposed to have. And if your church is visionless, then, how is this going to actually benefit the team, benefit the church? Could it cause conflict? This one is not going to be as easy to use as the values one.
That's right.
On the values one, it's like jump, but on this one, it's going to have to be used, carefully and with great discernment, because it could create conflict in the church. Even if the team, like say your leadership team, would come out with a healthy directional statement, this is where we're going as a team, all of a sudden now, how is that in conflict with where the church is and what's going on with that? So I think that's huge. I think another challenge is going to be that I still think we have a vast majority of pastors and or team leaders that think that they're supposed to just give marching orders and everybody's supposed to step up and follow. So creating the climate for a tool like this to be used will be absolutely huge. Let's use the phrase. I love it. This seems like a spiritual trust fall
for leaders. I love that's a great descriptor.
That was great. And so is there enough trust in the team to put myself out there like that? So at spiritual trust fall, that's absolutely huge. I like that.
Good. One of the things I think from my perspective, very early on in understanding, was looking at the definition of this, the GRIP definition of leadership, and realizing that definition of leadership didn't fit with what I think society thinks leadership is. And so this is really getting back to that. And I think Mark nailed it when he said that he had to decide that he didn't want leadership to look like a top-down, but the community value, team value. And if the leader doesn't have that, I agree, Wayne, this is going to be very hard to use. Yeah, because otherwise all you're doing is looking for people to affirm what you already want to happen. And that's exactly the wrong use of this. Anything else? Anybody else?
If I could just one other quick thing. I know it's designed to use without a coach, but man, I think, you just, Ken made the statement about, the leader and discernment, everybody just rallies around him. That the value of having a coach to go through this would be huge, because a good coach will help a leader gain perspective. So would be a huge value to doing this with a coach. I don't care. I mean, if I were to do this with a team, I'd want to have a coach helping me walk through and keeping me honest.
Yeah, thanks.
Just to counter the concerns that I think are valid about strong leaders and how they'd react to this. Les brought out something in our group that was extremely helpful, and that is that everybody wants clarity. And so even if I believe that God has given me clear direction for our team, it would be invaluable for me to be aware of the personal sense of direction and calling God has for those he's given around me, even if I want them to do what I want them to do. It's really valuable. So Les, thank you for that feedback. And I think that's a really proactive way to sell this to leaders and teams. And I certainly agree with Wayne that I think that the adding this to a team build process would be invaluable. And I think you can also frame it in the way for the leader where I don't know many leaders who don't want clarity on where their lead people are at. And this gives them that. And it also then, once they're at the table, it allows the Holy Spirit the privilege and opportunity to help the leader begin to see and hear things maybe differently than they actually went into the event for. So
yep.
Les, thank you for that the word clarity and how this really helps that even for the strongest leaders.
Good. Hey, Jim, go ahead. You had a question.
Yeah. Yes. So I'm assuming that the way the tool is laid out, that it's pretty self-explanatory to people how to utilize it. But as I'm listening, I also think that this is great information for a team build. I know that a lot of I'm United Methodist, and the way that we've got this new board system structured, is that in our new board model, we have an annual meeting where we create kind of goals for the next year. And so this type of activity would be a great morning activity, which I'm actually doing for a church in February. And so is there a way to incorporate this into a team build? And is there going to be a training tool to help us as coaches learn how to do that?
Great questions. Short answer is yes. Is it going to be ready before that time to launch into it? You will see. Depends on when you're in February. That's sort of our target time to have the training completed, is right around that late January, February timeframe for the GRIP Plus training, and Plus being the combination of values and discerning direction together. The incorporation piece, I would say 100%. It's more a matter of thinking through, I think Les, you mentioned it really well, that there's a discernment piece in here, that we haven't had to wrestle with as much as GRIP-Birkman coaches, because overstated, GRIP-Birkman's the solution, right? And so now with more of the options of tools that really are situationally driven, like you're talking about, Jim, it's that ability to ask the right questions on the front end of what are we trying to get to on the back end, and what tool makes the most sense for us to get there, right tool, right place, right audience, but really starts with the right questions from the coach on the front end. And so as a coach, do we know those questions of, sounds like that's a direction setting type of meeting. So I would love to have this information. If it's a, how are we going out into the world? I probably want discerning directions, and I want to know their bodybuilding roles, right? Those are the two that are going to drive that for me. If it's a new team, I might want values and just GRIP as a whole, and then leave the discerning direction for sort of a step 2. But we'll have to think through some of those scenarios. And so, to your point, I would love to have a conversation, or, a few of us get together and have some of those scenario-based conversations around what makes the most sense, because that's where the community learning around this, we're so bleeding edge, as one of my former leaders like to say. We're so much on the front end of how this can be incorporated with GRIP-Birkman, with GRIP as a standalone, with GRIP Plus. We're going to need to learn together on some of these different things.
Yeah. Susan, did you have a comment?
Yes, when we were talking about how counterculture this is in terms of most leaders, most churches being in a top-down leadership form, the comment was made that I thought was very interesting by someone who works with students, that our new generation, many of us who are older maybe aren't up to speed on how the new generation thinks that we need to be. I think it was Garrett that was commenting on this. Was it you, Garrett? And said that we need to understand that this is going to really align with the younger people's way of thinking and their preferred way of doing things. And so if we've got a multi-generational team, we're going to need to work on that and make sure that they understand one another and can be aligned in the desire to do this and how it can work.
Yeah. Mark, did you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I got a quick question. I don't know which of these last 3 answers, but at what point would, if we know this is for this season, at what point does a new season begin and this discerning direction together process needs to happen again? Meaning, is it a turnover of percentage of staff? Is it a number of years? Is it a feeling or a sense that we need to shift, or maybe all the above?
Yeah, I think that's a great question as well. 2 pieces come to mind immediately. One, we all know from team dynamics, you remove a person or add a person, your dynamics are changed. And so there's a review process that I would naturally build into that. I think the other piece, Mark, is that's a little bit of why we built in that 6-month review, because we believe that 6 months gives you enough time to implement things, for things to feel a little bit differently if you're intentional toward it. Otherwise, nothing can change in 6 months, right? And so that's the sort of cadence that we've identified. Open to other people's thoughts on that, but as a process, we identified the 6 month as a team leader. I think that adding, removing along with the 6 month is, you know, would be the piece. Les, did you have something to add in there?
Well, just a couple of thoughts. Like, I think the thing with this one is that at some point there's going to have to be a little bit of thought given to the differences between a smaller organization and a larger organization where this is happening at multiple levels all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because the question that just got asked is around, you know, how often do you do this? Well, within a larger organization, there's always some of this going on. So I think it's trying to figure out how to create the systemic influence of this in places where multiple teams are constantly working on alignment and planning and discerning and all the rest of that, right? So that'd be the one thing I think we're going to have to think through. I think the other thing, and this may not be the case, but what I've heard in the past is that there may be less emphasis on people needing to access these two tools through a coach than there would be, say, for GRIP-Birkman. And yet in both of these cases, I live in a city where there are tons of potholes. And I can see scenarios in both the values and in the discerning one where somebody could take this off the shelf and not know what they don't know. And then they begin to walk their way through this, and it actually ends up being really disruptive because they weren't aware of some of the factors that would come into play potentially, either because people aren't self-aware or they don't have the team cohesion or any of those kinds of things that are actually only going to get amplified through this conversation instead of clarified. So it'd be interesting to think through how do we communicate and set this up in such a way that we do what we can to protect or to keep that from happening.
Yep. No, thanks, Les. You know what? I think we can spend a lot of time here, and I want us to move on because we really want to show you a little bit about how this is going to work and what it's going to look like and the process. So I'm going to turn it back to John here to talk about some of the other upgrades we're doing, how the dashboard, how you get to this and using the GRIP-Birkman website, and then we can come back and obviously there are some good Coaches Cafe conversations for us over the next little while on this. So John, take us into this next step.
Well, I wanted to show you the process a little bit, and get to the website to where you can see what is it that the individuals walk through to get to their discerning direction statement. And so they'll come to this. A couple of nice features here. We do have the link directly into the Bible app as they're processing, as they're spending time. We do believe this is a really reflective and personal time. We wanted to create an environment that puts them into this. So a place where they can capture their own notes around that and have them emailed to themselves so that they can be thinking as they go through it. But essentially, they'll have a little introduction and then a series of videos that will walk them through this process. And so, prayerful invitation. This is really just about scripture and them seeing different things where we're just encouraged from the word about, how do we lean into this, and a place for them, again, right here to just be capturing and journaling, that verse stood out to me, or this word is jumping out to where they can capture some of that along the way. The reflection piece is really about let's look at your life. Let's look at the experiences that you've had. Let's look at some of, the relationships. Let's look at your gifting. Let's look at those different pieces. This is really bringing them into the idea of what are those different elements. Discernment and drafting, then, one of the things that we've learned throughout doing this type of process is a lot of times it's really important for them to hear some examples of other people's statements, to hear different things along those lines. So guiding them into that process of thinking through what are the places, what are the people that are meaningful, and then them going into a process of actually drafting their statement. And this is where it will begin to be shared with their team leader. So everything that they've done in their notes will be just for them, but then this part will begin to then be what's shared. So asking them to draft the statement, asking them to reflect on the percentage piece of it. And then there's some impact reflecting. And this is shifting the I to the we. And this is so critical in the process. We want them to think within what they're currently doing. How is it fitting? What would you need to change in order to increase this? And then what impact may this have on your team? Let's talk about it. How do you think it's going to mess with your team if you do this more? And what's the negative impact of you doing it more? That's an interesting thing to think through, right? Of if I leaned into my area of passion more, my area of direction from the Lord, how might that be disruptive to others? And then the idea of team direction, this idea of being able to speak in, where are we deepening or expanding? So all of these questions are part of this personal element, this personal reflection that happens, and then it's completed in that. So again, I wanted to show you that because it's not a simple, hey, here's a survey, fill these in. We really wanted to take them even personally through a process of thinking through the components that contribute to this and how those pieces fit together. That being said, let's talk about some of the new upgrades. Let's talk about some of the new things that as coaches you have access to and visibility to, that hopefully will continue to support making you more effective as a coach, helping your coachees to feel like they're understanding the information more and being able to connect. First thing is the dashboard. So when you now log into the site, you will actually come to this dashboard. So for everyone, not just for you as a coach, for anyone that's taken the GRIP in any way, shape, or form, or the values or discerning direction, they will come to this overview page. And you'll see then on this, you can click directly into any of them, and it takes you into the review process that we've been familiar with. So from that then, the other pieces of the dashboard, you'll see that with the values, again, I've completed the assessment, but I can go back in here and review, see them, and do that. So it doesn't take me through the entire process again, but it does give me the chance to go back in and to see some of those other words that are there. The PDF print obviously will give me that personalized report again. Discerning direction, same thing, gives me my statement as well as the percentage where I feel that I'm able to invest in that right now. And again, that 6-month review will prompt me to go back in and say, man, right now it's more about the equipping, less about the new partnerships, or maybe it's more about specifically, I'm really leaning into this, or this is where I feel the Lord's leading me, type of thing. Here's what I think of you as still a very valuable component. So it is right here. It's where they will start again. For those of you that haven't played with this much, I strongly encourage you to play with this, to be able to look at the different people and their feedback to you as a person that's taken it. This is, again, if gifts are discerned most clearly in the context of relationships, let's facilitate the process of other people speaking into it. The GRIP review process, this really walks you through as a coach now. 80% of the time, I'm using the GRIP review process in my coaching. I'm literally going straight through it right there on the website, as opposed to printing anything off. And doing that now, of really getting into that space, because you can reorder and do those things right in there, get the new PDF sent off to them, so it makes it a little bit easier. So dashboard, number one thing that is new that you will see. Notifications, you'll see more about this coming. This will be things like
you've ordered a report for somebody, but they haven't completed it yet. Or maybe they just completed a GRIP, but they didn't actually go on and do the Birkman yet. Maybe it's that you sent them an invoice, but they haven't paid yet. Maybe it's that somebody completed a here's what I think of you. All of those different things will be in your notification center so that you can keep a pulse on what's happening with your coaches or your coachees as you're moving forward. So we think that'll be really helpful as a way to sort of get a snapshot of what's happening. Those of you that have done large team builds, you understand how beneficial that would be to have sort of a quick check to be able to see those things. Probably the most important thing, the dashboard is obviously the most visible thing, but I want to share with you organizations and teams. This is something that we've been trying to figure out how we can get it to you for a while. And so I'm excited that we're getting to roll this out now to you. What you'll see here is all of your clients. So you have all of your GRIP clients here. Mark, there you are, buddy. And you can then move them around into teams. So you can add a new organization and have an organization. They can start in that as you order. I'll show you the ordering process in a minute here. But if I go to Fellowship of Wildwood, this is an organization. These were all ordered together under an organization. And then down here, I have my teams. This is my teams section to where then I can look at these different teams, and I can look and I have access to the 3 different reports right here, and I can click on any of them. So I'll go to the RVAL. Well, actually, you'll see here, allow team members to access the report. So if I click on this, then all of these team members, when they log in, they can see the team reports as well. So this is unchecked. They don't get to see it. I can change one of them. This is the pastor. So I can make him a leader. That gives him visibility to it from the get-go. But changing someone's role there, I can click on this and look then into those reports that I showed you earlier. This is how you then get to that space. Discerning direction, GRIP, same thing. So you have the opportunity then to, with any organization, I'll take Matthew Blake here, for instance, I can just take him from that organization and I can move him down here into different teams. He already exists in that team, but that opportunity, am I breaking up on y'all here? Is that better? Maybe so, we'll play it out. If I'm breaking up, then just let me know.
Okay.
But with this structure, then super easy to create a team as far as just clicking the new button here, adding a new team, pulling in individuals into that team so that then you can run your own team reports. You can actually set up then your own things. And if your team members don't have that, then you'll actually be able to see it. So if I pull up this team and I go into discerning direction right now, you'll see that it's just not completed. So it gives me another way to see, have they actually done their homework yet or not? So again, visibility into being able to see that type of thing, okay? So organizations and teams, you have the notification process, you have the dashboard. The other big change that's happened is in the ordering. So with the ordering process, we wanted to, again, simplify this down. You'll see that GRIP Plus is now an option, which includes GRIP, discerning direction, and our values. It is the full, all of that together. That is GRIP Plus. GRIP as a standalone, what we've had previously, and then the idea of Plus. So for those clients who have previously done GRIP, but that would like to upgrade together, that option is there for them. We talked about the standalone components or the standalone opportunities as well. So doing values as a standalone, doing discerning direction as a standalone, and then you have your other reports, your other GRIP-Birkman reports that are not changing. I do want to call out the pricing on these. You know, everything has gone up in cost, right? We've watched it across the board in groceries. We've seen it in travel. We've seen it everywhere around us. And I want to call out that we're not doing it right now. We're so committed to this, actually, of this being accessible to more people, that we're not touching the price structure on it. So GRIP is not going up in price. It remains a $15 price point with volume discount. That the volume discounts actually apply to GRIP Plus as well. That will start with 10 reports if you do 10 at a time. GRIP Plus being $25 combines the 2 additional reports. If you do them together, it's $15. If you do them as standalone, it ends up being $17, $10 and $7.50, or $25 for the whole bundle. So again, we do want to incentivize people doing them together, but we tried to keep it as cost effective as possible so that you as coaches feel like it's not a barrier to you being able to use it.
You are getting a little garbled again, John, just a little.
I am. All right. My headset decides that when it wants to work and it doesn't. So those are the 4 main things that we did want to introduce to you, as far as the dashboard, the ordering process, the notifications, and the organizations and teams. So again, all of those things are meant to be able to serve you as coaches and hopefully ease the process for you. I want to take a little bit of time really now just to open it up, to have some questions for you, and team, you may have to jump in if my headset isn't working so well. But let's go ahead and I want to capture questions more than feel like we need to answer them all. So I would love for you to use the chat feature to just begin to capture those questions that are coming to mind as you're seeing this, and team can consistently help in making sure that we're seeing all this.
Yep. One of the questions just came in is that how do coaches get access to organizations? So here's a coach stepping in, an organization said, come and help us with this. How does that coach get access to that organization?
So gaining access to an organization will still be an admin function. So if there already is an established organization and you're then going to begin coaching, you will need to email Anna Dawn then to be added to that. Or the other option is they can invite you in to the organization. So one of the things, go back over here and go to that page under organizations, is you can actually invite a user to join. So if I'll go to one of them that I'm not a part of right here. I could actually invite you into it. I could invite someone that's not a part of it to be in that organization, and then they would be a part of it. So 2 options on that: either admin to get set up so you have complete visibility, or they put you into that. I didn't mention this on organizations, but less thinking of you, or some of you that have denominational roles, that you can actually set up departments and actually departments under departments on that. So you can move it out all the way to 4 levels down, and wherever they are in the highest level, they will have visibility into the lowest level, is the way that it's structured right now. So if you put them in this organization and they're part of this team, then they would see all of these. If I'm in this team, then I would only see this team type of thing, unless I'm in both departments. So
and yes, you can create your own organizations. The question come up. For sure. And move people into it, and move people out as that organization changes, and then run reports on that.
We're giving you a lot of control to be able to move people around in that. So.
And Les, I think you asked about whether slides from today will be available. They can be, as well as we are recording this, and so this will be available for you to go back over the recording and look at some of the stuff.
And the one thing on that, we're making, you're showing a huge investment by spending this time with us today. So first of all, let me just say thank you for that. The second piece is that you're essentially not in a pilot group, you're in a beta though, as far as how we're going to apply these things. So your feedback is really important to us. How you're experiencing this is really important to us. And so we want to hear back from you, and we're not even going to go public with all of our coaches. We have a mailing list of somewhere around 700 now. We're not going to go public with coaches for the next couple of weeks. So this is really where we want you to dissect this, to chew on it a little bit. We have some little detail things that we're continuing to fine tune. You'll see the announcement come out to coaches in a few weeks. We're not going to a public launch to all those that have taken GRIP at some point. We're not actually going to do that all the way until probably February. So just to sort of understand, you're very much on the inner circle here by us introducing it to you this way, by you making this investment. We want you to see that. We want you to experience it, and you'll begin to see things continue to trickle out as we move forward here.
John, with the lists of clients, will we have control over how they're organized alphabetically or any other way we might in the big list?
Yeah, I just realized that the other day. I will make a note of that. Today, it's not. Today, it's, I believe when I look at my list, it must be in like from the most recent order type of thing, I guess. I'll find out about that. That's a great call out, Les. So good. Thanks for that.
Someone asked, would we have sample reports available for values and discerning direction eventually?
We do, yes. So on the site, and I will send these links to you afterwards. They are live now, but if you go to discerning direction to the overview page, then the sample report is there. And for our values, same thing. And again, we're not going to be sending out, these pages are live. People can search for them and find them, but we're not going to be going overboard on publishing, making a big deal out of these pages as we continue to discern in this soft launch. But you'll see then that the sample reports opened up in a separate window, but they are available here then for that. So, and you see the facilitation guides are also here. So certainly welcome you to take a look at those things, and you can see a little bit of how the facilitation guides are set up as well.
Stating the obvious, I think it's important. I'm thankful that coaches training from heretofore and trainer trainings this will look like the way that it's always been, and which is really, really exciting. And I praise God for that and for the quality of work y'all have done. It also begs the reality of something else that you're obviously working on, and that is the need for tutorials and coaches cafes and various ways to get all of us who've been around on the same page at the same time as much as we can. And so I just commend you to that ongoing process, and thank you for the quality of work that you've done so far in that, as today is example.
And to that end, two things. One, we will be doing a plus training that will be for essentially coaches and trainers that would like to gain further understanding of that. So that will be an option available to you. And and then we'll be launching a GRIP Plus training. So a lot of questions have been, hey, are we going to have a GRIP only coaches training? We're going to do a GRIP Plus facilitation training. We want you to be able to do that. So GRIP-Birkman will continue as a coaches training as a standalone, and really just thinking about GRIP Plus then as being the other alternative for that. So those will be available. Again, our goal is by end of February. And one of the things on this is actually to invite you, and we're going to send out a survey right after this, is to invite you to be part of the process. When I look on this call, almost half of you have been intimately involved in some way of helping us develop either some of the I to we or these assessments, and we need your help. This is not a I to we leadership team or a John Blake show in any way, shape, or form. We need your voices. We want your input in these. So we're going to have task forces that are going to be tackling the IDOE equipping. How do we do some of those bite-sized things? A separate group will be the GRIP Plus facilitation training. We want to look at it. We want to have that as a group that's looking at it. Another one is going to be feedback and connecting, just a group that's saying, as people are using these new tools, we want to be reaching out to hear what's working, what's not working, so that we can continue to develop those things. So very intentionally, we're going to have those groups. And the last group leads into an announcement, which is we want to get back together. We want to get back together in person. And so we're looking at late spring, tentatively the 3rd through the 5th. We'll have those dates confirmed within the next couple of weeks. We want to get together and talk through not just GRIP Plus, not just GRIP-Birkman. It's going to be an I2We conversation, and you'll hear more about I2We and what I2We is as an umbrella over everything that has to do with GRIP Plus, and GRIP-Birkman. But that will be the official launch and a gathering of us coming together to talk through these things, continue to grow these things. So we're open to ideas where the location might be. Front runners right now could either be Calgary or LA, or DC's been in the mix. So, but if you have a great place and you want to host us, then we're open to hearing about it, to have a gathering where we're bringing people together. So.
Yeah. Somebody suggested Cancun, but anyway, that's
we have connections.
The question was, is our relationship with Birkman remains the same? Yes. I mean, that we still, one of the things you need to understand is that we have been identified as GRIP-Birkman. We're realizing that GRIP-Birkman needs to simply be a part of what I2We offers. So we are really moving, we are becoming I2We. That's what we want. That's what we think our spiritual call is, to build a body by moving from individualism to corporate unity. And so part of I2We will be GRIP-Birkman. And so just so you understand that shift that's happening in the way that we're presenting and with the way we view that, it's not in any way changing our relationship to Birkman at all, but it just to understand that that's one of the ways that we want to build the I2We. And we actually are having conversations. Are there any other organizations that we should be adding to this process? And we haven't formalized that yet, but we're having those conversations that maybe we can add value to other kinds of assessments out there that you as coaches are using and could add value to. And some of these things that we're doing now actually can be very easily incorporated into that.
Yeah, I think what we've all been committed to all the way through are the principles. And if the principles at their core, what are they really doing? They're moving us from I2We. And so as an organization, I2We, we want to be principally and kingdom principle, right? Rooted in scripture. We want to be grounded in those principles and not assessment driven. And so that it's a way for us to get to that space, to us not being assessment driven, but to us articulating and modeling that we're principle driven together. And that was the impetus for designing I2We.
Just two comments as an ongoing, fairly highly vested practitioner. I just came back from Uganda and was with people who have not seen you, John Blake, for 10 plus years, and who spoke of your impact in specific ways in their lives. And I guess as long as I'm around, and I'm planning to die eventually, but until that point, I want to err on affirmation. And I just praise God, John, for who you are. And I would love to take the time to reference each of you in the leadership team specifically, because I have privilege to know all of you and have shed blood with many of you in terms of ministry. Thank you for the level and depth of investment that you've made. It is amazing to me as the historical pioneer to this process, what happens when you equip and release, and then you get out of the way and you watch what God does. And it is truly amazing. And so thank you to you on leadership for the cost that you paid that most of the rest of the people do not understand. Thank you for that. But that's the most exciting part of this, is that y'all are embodying who we have been from the start, and that is, and the name now embodies it. And that's the last commendation that I wanted to make, is that you're modeling and embodying for us even today an I to we process, and you act like it. And the problem with values today is if you say something's important, people will then watch and see if you're acting that way. I'd like to thank you on behalf of the rest of us, the practitioners, for acting I to we today and in this process. And we are the blessed ones as we move into the next generation. I just commend you and I praise God by way of affirmation for that. So hallelujah.
Well, thanks. Thanks, Paul. So as we come near the highlight of our time here, I can't believe you guys have stuck with us this whole time. So John, how do we close this?
Yeah. We're going to be sending out a note to you, and we'd love to get your feedback. You know, we realize that let's go back to GRIP-Birkman language for a minute. We realize that a lot of you are south of the equator in your needs and stress behavior as far as your circle square. And so in that blue yellow, you need some time to chew on all these different things. And we want you to take that time to think through it and to process, identify those questions, identify what really is connecting with you. And I would say, chew on it, fill out that survey in the next, 42 or 72 hours or so. We know that, if you forget about it, then it's going to go away. And actually, frankly, the offer is going to go away. So complete the survey within the next week. And we would like to gift you the plus, which is discerning direction in our values. We want you to go through the experience of taking it, of having that, of seeing what it's like, and then thinking through where can you begin to use this? What might be an avenue for you to do that over the next couple of months? And again, it's all live now. You can do it all now, but you won't see us pushing it yet. So you, as we are pushing it with you, though, we want you to experience it. We want you to try it out so that we can continue to learn together in this environment.
And we're happy for you to see if it can be broken. I mean, we want to, like if something doesn't work, let us know. If you can't do something, let us know. We're wanting to give this to you, and thanks for your being able to stick with us today. And then we depend upon you to help us make this better.
Let me pray blessing over us as we go. Father, we release the tools to you. We give them to you, Father. We give you these coaches, Lord. Would you allow us your creativity as we look at these things to understand and to distill down, Father, what you would have for us in this as we continue as a community, as this community, to move forward together and into the we. And Lord, as we then go into our separate places and move into the we, Father, would you continue to guide our steps in powerful ways, Lord, in that. We will be open-handed with the relationships that you entrust to us, the gifts, Lord, the direction that you're calling us, and the values that you've placed inside of us, Father. May we steward them for your kingdom purposes so that more people would know you, Jesus. We pray these things in Jesus' powerful name. Amen. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Hey,
blessings.
Thanks for coming, guys, everybody.